Creo que a pesar de que vaya llegando la gente, tenemos que empezar para mantener el horario, que es una mañana bien cargada. Esperamos que hayan dormido bien hoy. Buenos días. Empezamos la segunda jornada del tercer Foro de la Alianza, coorganizado por la Fundación Bertelsmann y la Fundación Bankia por la formación dual. Y hoy empezamos con la conferencia magistral Training Culture as a Key to a Successful Apprenticeship, que nos va a dar Christof Nägele, investigador y profesor de la Universidad de Ciencias, Aplicadas y Artes del noroeste de Suiza. Será presentado por Andrés Pereda, director de Desarrollo Corporativo de la Cámara de Comercio de España. Adelante, Andrés.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias a todos por su asistencia y al profesor por atender la invitación de la Alianza para la FP Dual en España, de la que la Cámara de Comercio de España, como todos ustedes saben, forma parte. Si me permiten que haga una muy breve mención a la Cámara de España, por el hecho de estar vinculada al impulso de la FP y de estar vinculada a la propia Alianza, la Cámara de Comercio de España es una corporación de derecho público y como tal está regulada por ley. En este caso, una ley básica del año 2014. Entre las funciones, digamos, más importantes que la ley le mandata a la Cámara es precisamente el desarrollo de la formación profesional dual en España. Y eso responde al interés y al calibre que la formación profesional tiene en el protagonismo que tiene y que debe tener en la economía española, dado que a lo que nos corresponde como Cámara de Comercio de España es la defensa del interés general del tejido empresarial español. Nosotros lo que estamos haciendo en este capítulo en particular es poner en marcha, como ayer tuvo ocasión de explicar mi presidente, José Luis Bonet, un programa de FP Dual que tiene dos elementos fundamentales. El primero es constituir unos puntos de atención en la red española territorial de cámaras, 86 cámaras en todo el territorio, para ir involucrando progresivamente a las empresas españolas a este modelo, donde todavía no están todas las que nos gustaría. Y, por otra parte, el desarrollo y la capacitación de los tutores de empresa, una figura que está llamada a cobrar protagonismo en este sistema más del que tiene actualmente, y capacitarlos para que puedan desarrollar su papel de la mejor manera posible. Como decía, este desarrollo de la FP Dual es una necesidad muy relevante para la economía española y voy a hacer también una muy breve mención a esta cuestión, ¿no? La economía española, como saben, pues está profundizando en un cambio de modelo. Lleva en este momento 6 trimestres consecutivos creciendo simultáneamente demanda interna y demanda externa, lo cual es un hecho inédito en la historia reciente de la economía española, porque tradicionalmente las empresas, al calor de la demanda interna, del crecimiento de la demanda interna, tendían a replegarse al mercado interior. Digamos que eso tiene por detrás, como no puede ser de otra manera, unos datos de competitividad y de productividad que permiten que las empresas españolas puedan competir en todo el mundo. Y hay otros datos que, digamos, yo creo que tenemos que poner encima de la mesa que tienen mucho que ver con el modelo de FP Dual, y es que, lo estábamos comentando con el profesor también, en lo peor de la crisis, en los peores años, en el 2013-2014, la economía española, una cuarta parte de la población general estaba en paro, en torno al 25%, y un 55%, es decir, más de la mitad de la población de los jóvenes por debajo de 25 años estaban en paro también. En este momento, con los últimos datos disponibles, la población, el dato de desempleo, digamos, generales, está en torno al 17% y el dato de desempleo juvenil está cercano al 40%, que sigue siendo un dato absolutamente inaceptable, pero es 15 puntos inferior a los datos del peor momento de la crisis. Otros datos que yo creo que nos tienen que hacer reflexionar y que son, digamos, un buen contexto para que el profesor Nägele nos pueda dar su visión sobre el asunto, proceden del Observatorio de Competitividad que la propia Cámara de Comercio de España ha elaborado. Ha preguntado a un número muy importante de empresas sobre la FP Dual en España y apenas un 40% de las empresas conocen este sistema y solo un 9% lo utiliza. Por otra parte, a pesar de que el desarrollo de la FP Dual en España no esté al nivel que todos los que aquí nos damos cita queremos, hay otros datos que sí que nos alientan a seguir trabajando. Es verdad que en los últimos 4 años los alumnos, como comentaba además ayer en su inauguración el presidente de Bankia, se han multiplicado por 6 y las empresas, el número de empresas que participan en este sistema se ha multiplicado por 20. Han pasado los alumnos de 4.000 a 24.000, las empresas de 500 a 10.000. Bueno, es evidente que hay mucho por hacer, que este sistema en España no ha terminado de consolidarse. El Gobierno está trabajando en un decreto de formación profesional que la Cámara de España está estudiando conjuntamente con ellos como órgano consultivo que somos, y lo que queremos entre todos es que las empresas se impliquen, que el Gobierno lleve a Cortes Generales la mejor legislación posible para que eso sea fácil para las empresas y yo creo que de todo esto el profesor Nägele pues nos puede arrojar luz. Él conoce bien el sistema de FP, es profesor investigador de la Universidad de Ciencias Aplicadas y Artes del noroeste de Suiza. Es también profesor de la Universidad de Basilea, es especialista en formación profesional, en aprendizaje y desarrollo de competencias en el ámbito académico y laboral, en el desarrollo profesional desde las etapas escolares. Es además presidente, como se ha comentado, de la red europea, de la gran red europea de formación profesional VETNET. Es profesor invitado del Instituto de Tecnología y Educación de la Universidad de Bremen y miembro del Consejo Editorial de la Revista Internacional de Investigación de la FP. Es conferenciante en diversas universidades de prestigio, ha publicado numerosos artículos y yo creo que hoy lo más relevante es escucharle a él y que nos explique, digamos, el binomio alumnos-empresas y cuál es, digamos, la relación que hay entre todos los agentes que forman parte de este sistema de FP y cómo podemos, en definitiva, impulsar el modelo en España. Muchas gracias. Profesor, tiene la palabra.
Okay. Hello, nice. Is it okay? Okay. Good morning. And thank you for this, I think, nice introduction. Unfortunately, my Spanish is not that good that I know what you have been talking about. I expect, but thank you. And thank you that I can be here and share some thoughts about dual vocational education and training with you. And thank you to the organizers. There are many organizers of this event. For inviting me. I'm really honored. And I will start now with my talk and share some thoughts about dual VET with you. When I was preparing this talk and when I was asked to have this keynote this morning, the first thing that came to my mind about vocational education and training in Spain was the headlines about your economic crisis and that most of your young people attend university and many of them struggle to find a job. I was then happy to meet Monica Mozo and Mercé Casson. Chacon, you excuse my pronunciation. You're smiling. And they explained to me the initiative on dual VET in Spain. And this gave a very different picture than the picture I had from the headline. And additionally, my picture on the VET in Spain is also very much influenced by the work of Fernando Maruenda and his work on the interconnection of learning and acting, and that VET should not only be an option for low achievers, for social inclusion, but that dual VET should also be an option for high achievers. I then wrote a paper or a report from Graham Hedwell and Ana Garcia, and I would like to cite one sentence out of this report. Moving beyond the present school-based initial vocational training system and to adopt a dual system-based apprenticeship model would offer benefits to the economy, to companies, and to individuals. But we see that cultural norms, expectations, traditions, or daily routines often hinder us to implement changes. Nothing will change unless there is a culture in which a dual apprenticeship training is embedded. End of the citation. I agree, and I was very happy that I have found this sentence because it fits to the topic of this talk very nicely. We need to have a culture for that, and we need to have a training culture within the companies, especially the small and medium-sized enterprises that offer apprenticeship places, that offer dual VET, because that relies or is embedded in a culture. And I will today talk about that part of the culture that addresses this question on how young people are trained in companies. And before you can train them in a company, they have to enter the company. You have to welcome them, and you have to socialize them in a company. I will talk about that in my talk. Thus, the focus will be not on a system level on how to design that, let's say, how to organize that as a whole, how to organize all the different actors in vocational education training, actors as, for example, the government, vocational schools, trade unions, foundations, and not to forget the apprentices and their parents. You all have to organize them in a way that this plays together. The focus will be today on the training companies, because I think that the training companies are a very important part in the whole VET systems. If you don't have any companies that train the young people, you can forget about dual vocational education and training. And you have to convince the companies that they engage in dual VET and that they do good training for the apprentices. But many companies are not familiar with dual VET, and they are not used and have no tradition or no knowledge to train apprentices. Also in Switzerland, where I'm coming from, only a small percentage of the companies trains apprentices. It's not a majority. And also in Switzerland, it's a never-ending task to convince companies to engage in dual VET. We have to motivate companies, and you see that in Switzerland, for example, that the government is running image campaigns for vocational education and training, and this helps enormously to raise the image of vocational education and training and to make it an option also for the high-achieving young people. For me, if we talk about training in a company, it is very important that if we are going to train apprentices, if you're going to train in a dual VET system, that the companies need to respect the needs of the apprentices as they do respect the needs of the company. I think this is it's a little bit different than training adults or employees in a company. There the focus can be on the needs of the company. They need some experts and they train it. If you train young people, you have to train and you have to educate them. And training apprentices can be in contradiction to the needs of a company. Let's say, what happens if you have a very talented young person in your company, you have trained them in dual VET, in an apprenticeship, and then he's going to leave the company because he wants to go to another company or if he wants to go to another higher education. So apprenticeship is, or dual VET is, not only to train the young people that they can do a job, but also to train and educate. This is the E in VET, the education part, to train and educate them to start a good career, to start a lifelong career, whether this career goes into a further professional development or whether it goes to higher education. This is some introductory remarks on how I see vocational education and training and why I think that the training companies play a key role in vocational education and training. But then I ask myself, am I going to present the Swiss educational system to you? I was told that you already know it, so I won't do that. What I brought with me are some questions that seem to be relevant if we discuss about dual vocational education and training. The first questions are, is dual VET attractive for companies? I know that there are some people from companies here. I would wonder, what is your answer to this question? Is it attractive for you? And is it attractive for young people, vocational education and training? Or is an academic track at the university more attractive? Do we have some young people here? No. Yes, of course we have, but not apprentices. We should ask them. And related to that question is the question, what is an apprentice? What would be your answer? And what is a workplace trainer? Do we need at all workplace trainers in dual VET? And then, if we go to the learning and training companies, is it at all possible to develop knowledge and skill during work? They should do their work and not learn. No, they can do both. But how can we organize that in a company, that the company can promote learning and training, and then to conclude what are elements of a good learning, culture? So the first question is dual VET attractive for companies or for young people? Yes, it is. You agree? I think I can make it short. In the last years, we have many reports published that tell us that dual VET is attractive for companies and for young people. And typically, training companies have a higher reputation and a better image, which can give them a competitive advantage. Many companies do not find employees with the specific knowledge they need and the skills they need. Dual VET can help to educate and train the people that are needed. Apprentices trained in dual VET already know the business, already know the company, so if you're going to hire them after the training, they are productive from day one, from the first day in your company. This is an advantage. And we see also that apprentices develop a high commitment to their profession. And economists show us repeatedly that investing in dual VET pays off. So there are many reasons that dual VET is attractive, but nevertheless we see also in Switzerland or in Germany that at the moment less and less companies are engaged in offering training in an apprenticeship system. There was just recently published a report from the Bertelsmann Foundation Germany showing very dramatically that some companies disengage from training apprentices, and we have to ask the question why. One answer is the demographic change. We are running out of young people in Switzerland and in Germany. But there are other reasons why an academic track becomes more attractive than the vocational track. Related to my talk here, I think it's important that for companies, if you ask the question whether it's attractive or not, you have to think that apprentices are often younger people, younger than the other employees, and they bring in new ideas. You can profit from the ideas of the young people. And dual VET helps to educate and train people that you need now and in the future. And for young people, what makes VET attractive? I think a key factor for young people, if we look at the several studies, is that VET is attractive for young people if they think that the training and education they get is of high quality. And if they see that this VET, dual VET, enables them to find or gives them a better chance to find a job and to start a sustainable career. Without that, I think that will not be that attractive. And this brings me to the next question. What is an apprenticeship? Just a short answer. The answer is that I would define an apprenticeship primarily as a person that wants to learn and wants to be trained to become an expert in a professional field. Most apprentices are eager to be productive. They don't want to do a good job. Unfortunately, this situation is misused by some companies that see apprentices as cheap labor force. We have this situation also in Switzerland, that some companies misuse apprentices as cheap labor force. But we see at the same time that within these sectors, within these trades, where they misuse the apprenticeship, they have also a higher dropout rate. Apprentices leave the apprentice's place. So it's important that we see, I think, apprentices primarily as a person that wants to learn and wants to be trained to become an expert and not as a cheap co-worker. Apprentices are learners, are students. And the workplace trainer, do we need a workplace trainer? Yeah, we need one. And what is the role of a workplace trainer? Has a workplace trainer the same status as a teacher at the university? Why not? Because he's training, he's working with the young people in dual vet, in an apprenticeship training, and a workplace trainer has quite many roles. He is a teacher, instructor, he's an expert in his professional field, and he's a coach, he's a mentor, he's a guide, and a workplace trainer is also a colleague of the apprentices because they are working together. And a workplace trainer should take care that an apprentice learn what he needs to learn. So he's responsible for the curricula, and he's also responsible that apprenticeship does not only do work as a cheap employee, but that he learns something whilst working. This brings me to the training, which is important in companies. And learning and training in dual vet is often described as a process in which the apprentices become a member of the community of practice through their active participation in the work process. This means also that the precondition for learning and training in a company is, as I mentioned it in the beginning, is that the apprentices adjust to the new situation in the training company. And this adjustment happens within the first few days or weeks in an apprenticeship through onboarding and organizational socialization tactics of the company. Onboarding means that any company needs to have some concept how to onboard, how to bring the apprentices on board. You think saying this sounds a little bit normal. But if you look at the companies, some companies do it, others don't do it. I was told one example when there was an apprentice on the first day in the training company, and there was an employee of that company present, and he was asking the young person coming to the place, "What are you doing here?" And the young people told them, "I am the new apprentice." And the employee said, "No, I don't nothing. And the boss is on vacation. Can you please come back in 2 weeks again?" This is a very dramatic example, but we see that some companies could easily make a better onboarding process, an onboarding process that consists of 3 elements, basically. It's to inform the apprentices about what they can expect, what they have to expect, is to welcome them on the first day. Not that the boss is on vacation, but that he is present and that you welcome the young apprentices. And we see that many companies have special programs, especially the big companies. They start with a special week where they welcome the apprentices. They have some activities with the apprentices, and they show the apprentices to all the employers that are relevant for them, and the employees can see the apprentices. It's also important that you have some kind of a concept to guide the apprentices, because they need some support, because they are not familiar with how it works in a company. A second thing is the organizational adjustment, the organizational association as part of the adjustment in the beginning. We have run a study to test how this organizational association works in the beginning of an apprenticeship. There are some models that tell us, some theories that tell us that it's important that you develop in the beginning of a new job, of an apprenticeship, some task mastery, and that you to become integrated into the work group. Without that, it will be hard to develop commitment, to become productive, or to be even satisfied with the apprenticeship. In this study, we were looking at the development of commitment to the organization, and especially to the commitment to the occupation. The theory was developed for adults, and our interest was, does this play also with apprentices? Is it the same process that you can expect that if an apprentice develops task mastery, he knows how to do the job, and if an apprentice get integrated, socially integrated in the beginning, that you have a positive outcome, that you have a positive adjustment, here as an example, the commitment. Our results were a little bit different. We found, related to commitment and task mastery, that we have a positive effect of the social integration on the development of commitment. I think this makes sense. If you are not integrated in the work group, if you don't find colleagues during the apprenticeship, it will be no fun to work there and to learn there. And you will also get no information if you are not socially integrated. Who knows how to do the job? These are your colleagues. And if you don't have colleagues, you will not get to know how to do the job. What was surprising, on the other hand, is that task mastery did not play a role. If you are going for a new job, you are expected to show from day one on that you can do your job. This is somehow different in apprentices. The companies do not expect that they know how to do a job. If you are an apprentice in a bakery, the baker does not expect that you know how to bake a bread. You are there to learn. But you, as an apprentice, are expected to socially integrate and to develop a commitment. This picture would certainly be different if we look at an apprenticeship later on. This is in the beginning. And this was the conclusion, our conclusion, that in the beginning of an apprenticeship, it seems to be extremely important to socially integrate the young people and not to ask them to be experts in something they don't know, but to welcome them and to tell them that they are important and that they are welcome and they are here to be trained and that they are here to learn something. But do apprentices themselves tell us that the workplace is also a learning place? This was a small study we were running, asking the apprentices, is the apprenticeship, is this work, or is this also learning? And the picture is very positive. This is the blue line. the apprentices tell us that they can learn, the most they can learn is in the company. Second, it's in the vocational school, the red line. And the green line are students in the academic track. So the workplace is a learning place, but what makes a workplace a learning place? And we have identified some factors. We were asking for different factors that could make a workplace a learning place. And I want to point out to this first point. It's the job design at the workplace, especially the scope of action. Scope of action is, has the apprentices the right to do a certain job as he wants to do it? Can he postpone doing something? Let's say, I don't have the time today, but I will do it tomorrow. Is this possible or not? Does he have the freedom to act like we would expect it for us, that we can say, no, the meeting today, we have to postpone the meeting for tomorrow, and I will do it tomorrow and not today, and so on. And the other thing is that the apprentices need to have some stress. Stress is enough to do. Here we see normally stress is nothing good. Here we see that often apprentices are underused, underemployed. They have not enough things to do. They are not allowed to do complicated things. And the more they can do it, the better it is. A second thing that came out is, another important thing is the pedagogical and didactical competence of the workplace trainer. It is the workplace trainer, and if you're familiar with regression analysis, this is one of the main effects, one of the biggest effects. The workplace trainer are a key factor in high quality workplace training. The workplace trainer in the different roles I mentioned, as a coach, as a colleague, as a trainer, as a teacher, and that's important. And just to say it, to mention it, another thing was that if the curricula of the school and of the workplace are somehow in line, and if the apprentices can use the knowledge and skills acquired at school at the workplace, and vice versa, then the learning place becomes the workplace becomes a learning place, this way around. And this is the point I mentioned in the beginning. VET is a system. It's not only the companies, it's not only the schools, it's not only the government, it's not only the regulations. VET functions if the different actors, the different parts play together. Now, how can a company promote learning and training? One thing that was mentioned is work design, job design. I mentioned the scope of action. I mentioned that the apprentices need some challenging work. And if we look into the literature, other aspects that add to that are important in designing a job are factors like you need to have jobs that demand cooperation, responsibility, and you need to have jobs that are cognitively demanding. The jobs and the task an apprenticeship has to do should not be too simple. Then you can drill it, you can train it. It's not learning. And it should be complete, should be elements in the job, there should be elements of planning, execution and feedback, direct feedback from doing the task. It should be some skill variety. Apprentices don't like it if they have to do the same thing every day. They need to have some variation. And the other one, task identity, scope of action, task significance, autonomy, feedback, and the possibility to learn from errors. An example, once I spoke to a cook he had a restaurant, and he was telling me that every second week he asked his apprentices to prepare the dessert, the sweets, for the Saturday. Every Friday, the cook in this restaurant had to prepare the dessert, the sweets that were sold on Saturday. And the only instruction the apprenticeship got was, you know the restaurant, you know what we are serving on Saturday, now it's up to you to create a dessert on Friday afternoon. And you get the budget of a certain amount, and you have to work with the budget and time you have to prepare a dessert. I was then asking this workplace trainer, hey, and what are you doing if the cook, if this does not work? If he burns something, or if there's no dessert? And he just smiled at me and said, this never happened. I do this now for 10 years, this never happened. And if it would happen, it would my obligation, it would my duty as a workplace trainer to find a solution. And I have always some ice in my fridge and can offer a dessert on Saturday, so no problem. But I think this is the kind of the job design we need, a lot of freedom, a concrete task, and a lot of responsibility for the apprentice. Another thing is promoting that through social interaction. And here the important thing is, here comes a workplace trainer. He has to know, or she has to know, how to interact with the apprentice. This is an example from a research group in Geneva, and they have been looking, in this example, in the interaction between a car mechanic and an experienced mechanic and a novice apprentices. And they recorded the conversation of these two people. They did it for different jobs, they did it for different apprenticeships. And they could show that the quality of workplace training, the quality or the fact that apprentices tell us that the workplace trainer is an important person in delivering in good quality in that, is this communication. And it's not only that the workplace trainer should tell the apprentice what he's doing, it's the way how he asks questions, how he guides the apprentices to detect, to see what he is doing. I had on the next slide a protocol, but it's too small, I won't show it. And it's really fascinating to see how these conversations are different between different experienced mechanics. And the conclusion of this research team is that we need to train the workplace trainers, that they are aware of this kind of mechanisms that are present, that they have the ability not only to tell their apprentices what they have to do, but that they are able to teach and train and educate the apprentices. And this is a different process than just telling someone doing something. I want to conclude. What are elements of a good learning and training culture? I think one thing that's important is, if we go back to the question, is dual vet attractive for companies and for young people? Yes, it is, we know. And I think one element of the culture should be that you see apprentices as young persons that want to be educated and trained to become experts in their professional fields, and experts you need to do the work, and that they have a good start and that they can build on the dual vet a sustainable career. And what is a workplace trainer as an apprentice? The apprentice, my picture is, an apprentice is a learner, is a student. It's not a person who a cheap workforce. It's a person who likes to go further to higher education, to higher professional education. And the workplace trainer has an important role, and I think that the workplace trainer should have some training. And I don't know how the status of a workplace trainer is in Spain. In Switzerland, we see that many young people who did a vocational education and training go to a special course to become a workplace trainer after they have finished their vocational education and training. So it's for many people. We have a study running with 5,000 people from the age of 16 to 25, and we see that many people, if they have go to these special courses for workplace trainers after they have finished vocational educations, it's somehow like the first step to a further education for many people. And I think this is a beautiful thing. Then, if we talk about onboarding, this process to get the new apprentices into the company, I think it's simply important that you welcome the apprentices and that you have a concept on how to welcome the apprentices. This is very important, and many companies have concepts. If you are in bigger companies, you find written concepts. If you are in a smaller company, you have some traditions on how to do it. But it's anyhow, it makes sense to reflect on how you onboard apprentices. Then socialization, the organizational socialization, I think it's important that we keep in mind that the social integration comes first, and then it's about learning to do the job. Task mastery comes second. It's important, but social integration comes first. And related to job design, I think you have to design jobs in a company that allow young people, apprentices, to use or to make use of their work for learning and training. And I have mentioned some factors like scope of action or enough thing to do that are important. And the last point is social interaction. A lot of the quality of workplace training in dual vet relies on the interaction between the apprentices and the workplace trainer. And we should work on that to enable the trainers to become perfect trainers. Okay, these were some thoughts to dual vet, to vocational education and training, and the role of some cultures embedded factors that can shape and vocational education and training, and then can help to make vocational education and training a success. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor. I don't know, Monica or Guillem, if it's possible to have a translation device, or you're going to ask in English anyway.
Yeah, okay. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the presentation, Christof. I have a question. In this piece of research that you are and your research group are doing, have you analyzed how those companies that go farther in teaching apprentices, they innovate more, maybe even in the job positions? I have an example of a Spanish company that told us that since they were designing the job position for the apprenticeships, afterwards they realized that they could do better than they were doing, were very technical, but not so much this word is difficult for me. Pedagogical, and afterwards they were using not for apprenticeships, but for rotation of workers in the company. So it was an innovation at organizational level, small one, but was an organizational innovation. So are you going in this direction also in your research? Thank you.
In the research we're doing right now, we don't have data on that, but I know other studies. And I think if a company starts to train apprenticeship, they have to rethink also how they train the employees in the company. And I think it's exactly what you happens what you're telling, that this has also a positive effect on the other apprentices, because who trains an apprentice in a company? It's the employee. It's not necessarily only the workplace trainer. It's all the people in the company who are responsible to train an apprentices. And you have to tell them how to do it. And this has the effect that they are trained themselves. Just to give you an example, I grew up in a small company. My father was an electrician and he had apprentices. And quite often, it was some years ago, some 30 years ago, when new technologies came into the business, he asked one of his best apprentices to try out the new tool, the new machine, the new procedure, because he knew that these young people was not restricted by his routines. He could play with the new tools. And then when he saw that this worked out, he eventually began to use these tools also for the employees he had in the company. So if this plays together, then you have a perfect match. Yes.
Any more questions?
Buenos días, doctor Christof. Yo quería preguntarle, la continuidad...
Yeah. Oops. You are destroyed. Now you're working again.
Buenos días, doctor Christof. Yo quería preguntarle sobre la continuidad de los alumnos de formación profesional dual en Suiza, si continúan realizando estudios universitarios y si lo que estudian estos chicos en formación profesional, después una parte de esto se les convalida en la universidad en Suiza. Gracias.
Yeah. The question is about educational pathways. If you start with an apprenticeship training, do the apprentices go to further higher education? Yes, they do. We do have the system that you can acquire the maturity, the permission to access university in parallel to the apprenticeship training. And at the moment there is a big campaign running in Switzerland sponsored by the government that tells us you can start as a carpenter and you can end up as a professor in the respective field. Or the other way is you don't have to go to the academic field, there is also a higher professional education. You can become a professional and a real expert in your vocation, and those are the two ways you can go after an apprenticeship. And it's an important message that an apprenticeship is not the end, it is a start. You start with an apprenticeship training and you start your sustainable career. Either you can also go and just work, this is also okay. But you can go to higher professional education or higher academic education. If you have the qualification and you have to do something for that, you don't get it for free, but the system is very, very, very open. So you could start as a butcher and end as a medical doctor in a hospital. I know one case. It's not a typical one. But just to demonstrate that the system is very open and that you can change from vocational education to academic education, and you can change from academic education to vocational education and training. And I have to add that the reputation of vocational education and training in Switzerland is very high. Still, if I'm going back home, my parents ask me, hey, what are you doing? You have been to university. Why don't I have learned and studied a real job? And you can hear this quite often in Switzerland, that vocational education and training has a very, very high reputation, and that people that go to university have to explain why they are going to university and not doing something real and sustainable. Yeah. time is running out. It's 10 o'clock. I don't know.
Muchas gracias, profesor. Me gustaría hacer una reflexión. I would like to... Okay. Me gustaría, la haré en castellano porque así me siento más cómodo. Me gustaría hacer una reflexión y ponerle una pregunta porque me ha interesado una de las cosas que ha dicho por si podía profundizar un poco en la respuesta que se da a uno de los retos que ha planteado. La reflexión que me ha interesado mucho es la que usted ha dicho, y aquí estamos en un foro con muchas empresas, que los chicos jóvenes solo irán o tendirán más a ir a puestos de aprendizaje que sean de alta calidad, ¿no? Esto me parece una reflexión muy interesante para un proyecto que estamos intentando, es hacer una alianza para la FP Dual de calidad, ¿no? Entonces, que los chicos, que haya evidencia que muestra que los chicos prefieren esos puestos, me parece muy interesante. La otra cosa que me ha preocupado un poquito más ha sido que usted ha mencionado que están declinando las plazas de aprendizaje en el sistema de formación profesional de Suiza, con la reputación que tiene, ha apuntado al cambio demográfico también, pero me gustaría preguntarle, la pregunta en concreto es cómo están los poderes públicos, el Gobierno en este caso, cómo está reaccionando ante esta situación. Muchas gracias.
There were basically two questions. One is on, the last one was on how is the government reaction to the decrease. They run image campaigns, this is one thing. Unfortunately, I don't have the picture. They have beautiful pictures showing and a campaign that started in 2016 and runs until 2019. This is one thing. And the other thing is, what is important is the construction of the VET system in Switzerland. And there the government plays an important role, not in defining what the companies have to teach or how the companies have, what the companies have to do, but they have defined some quality standards and they have built a network to coordinate all the different actors, vocational schools, companies, social partners, and the government are regularly there are regular meetings between these actors to see, to discuss the quality of vocational education and training. And if you have an apprenticeship like, let's say, a baker, or also in the technical field, then you have always a commission beside of this apprenticeship. And the duty of this the commission is to guarantee that what you are training in the apprenticeship is good today, but that is also good in the future. They have any apprenticeship is in a constant reform every 5 years. They have to rethink, are we on the right track? Are we offering the good content in our apprenticeship training? And this helps. And another initiative is not the government, it's the companies that start an initiative. And one example is a company that won a prize, and they invested in the quality, because quality of education. Because some companies started to pay more to the apprentices. Some company offered some bench benefits, like an additional week off, or some in the car industry they offered to pay the permission, the driving license, and so on. They offered money. And this company, this branch said, no, this is not the right way. We have to invest in the quality of training. And they have very good results that, not in the first year, but in the second years, the young people learn to know that they get some good quality training in that company, and they have less a problem to find new apprentices. But the demographic change is something we have to face and we have to deal with. And the first question was on... sorry.
No, era una reflexión sobre la atracción de los jóvenes hacia la calidad. It was I was thinking about the idea that you gave us about related with the quality of the apprenticeships, related with the attraction of youngsters. Yeah.
If you would have time, I would like to show you an example of a company in Switzerland that invests very, very much in high-quality education and training, and they also cooperate with the university in offering this kind of quality, and they have very good results. I can name the company, you probably know it. It's Schindler, the company that builds lifts and this, what's it called? The stairs, yeah. You're not familiar with the company? No? Yeah, you know. This is a company constructing lifts, and they construct it from Switzerland to Singapore to Asia and so on. And they invest a lot in the quality and also in pathways for young people, and they have very good results in that. So if you're really interested, it would be worth to look at these examples. And the main thing is the young people are attracted to high quality apprenticeship because they know that they can go, this was your question, they can go to university afterwards. And they can go into further studies. Okay, they can stay in their profession and advance in that profession. This is the important mechanism that's playing.
Muchas gracias, profesor. Desafortunadamente nos estamos quedando sin tiempo. We're running out of time, so we should finish. Muchas gracias a todos por su asistencia, y quiero agradecer a todos su asistencia, especialmente también al Ministerio de Educación, que está representado por la Subdirectora General Soria Iglesias, que es una de las personas que mejor conoce además este sistema, la formación profesional en nuestro país, y por la determinación que también ayer el Secretario de Estado pues mostró aquí para que el modelo sea el mejor posible. Muchas gracias.